So since today's topic will be self-love and divine love, maybe we can begin by invoking all together the sacred mantra Om, which maybe you know this or not, but one of the many meanings of Om is yes. If you want to say yes in Sanskrit, if you want to sound cool to your friends, do you know how to say yes in Sanskrit? Om. So Om means yes. It's a foundational affirmation, beginning with yes, not beginning with no. Many times our first step in the day is no, and the second, and the third, and the fourth. Hopefully some yes comes in between. But if we start with yes, some no's can come after, but yes is setting the tone for the rest of the unfolding. So Om means yes. No wonder most of the main mantras in our tradition start with Om. Begin on a positive note, on a note of hope, on a note of trust, on a note of openness, and on a note of acceptance, as we will be talking today, that we are already loved by the Divine. So we can recite all together this mantra Om, which will serve as a form of Mangala Charan or auspicious invocation of blessings. And for me, this is the most crucial part of the whole presentation, because it is our openness for the Divine to pervade all of us, and the rest, what will happen here, will depend on this. So hopefully we can all be together in this prayer and openness. So we can all recite Om 7 times. Bearing in mind this yes, this affirmation and openness to reality. We are trying to craft a safe vessel to share openly and to continue developing in our sambandha. More people coming. Okay. Will you dare to move a little bit closer? I know intimacy can sound dangerous. We all need it, so. So today's topic is self-love in divine love. Sometimes I've talked about that as self-love in bhakti. It's a very related topic to the notion of Sambandha, that it's the main theme of this Bhakti Bloom Festival. Sambandha means relationship. Yesterday we were talking about not only that there is something called relationship, but that everything is in relationship with everything else. No? So we are not talking here about relationship, we are talking about interrelationship. We are not talking here about connectedness, we are talking about interconnectedness. Everything is connected with everything else, sharing a common center. In our tradition, we will call that common center Krishna, which can be translated as irresistibly attractive. You cannot resist. It's too much. So Jiva Goswami will say, Bhajaniya Guna Vishishta. The divine, the Spirit Absolute, has such qualities that you cannot but be dragged by the force of that attractiveness to just dedicate your heart naturally. That should be the ideal impetus behind our surrender. Surrender is not out of fear, out of intimidation, out of social fitting in, not ideally. But surrender should be out of awe and wonder. No. The path of bhakti could be reframed as the path of fascination. Like I'm fascinated by the nature of that center that we all share. The all-attractive center, like a magnet that is attracting everything to constellate around it. But sometimes, if we are a little bit covered by rust, I think you say in English, we won't be attracted to the magnet. But it's not a problem with the magnet. We need just to do what Sri Chaitanya said, Cheto Darpana Marja. You have to clean the mirror of the heart, and then naturally will be an irresistible attraction. So we are all constellating around the same center, and we are all having something common. Therefore, we are all part of one family. The Vedas say Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which means there's only one family. Interesting idea. The moment we start to think about two families, we start to begin a process of fragmentation, divisiveness, separation. And that's such an exhausting way of living life. I was reading last night one book that today is in the hands of Gauravani Prabhu. He has stolen that from me in a loving way. This series of poems rendered by Daniel Ladinsky, and there is one poem by Hafiz, in which he's speaking to each one of us who many times live our life separated from the divine. I mean, we cannot be separated, but we live as if that's a reality. And he's saying basically like, sit down, relax, I'll get you a drink, I'll get whatever you need. You must be so tired, because there's nothing more exhausting than living in separateness from God. That's the most exhausting work we are doing unnecessarily. So we are all sharing this common center, though sometimes we forget that and we live as if we don't. So everything is related with everything else. So if the ideal of life is love, divine love, loving this common center, if everything else is related to the center, we are also invited to love everything else that is connected to that center. And we happen to be part of that. There comes the most difficult part. Many times it's relatively easy to speak about loving God, loving others, but when it comes to loving yourself, accepting yourself fully, we generally have some problems there. So that's why we have decided to share today this topic of self-love, self-acceptance, self-compassion in the context of divine love. So my main premise today is there cannot be real divine love without self-love, and there cannot be real self-love without divine love. If we just have self-love independent of its center, it can end up being narcissism. I'm the center, I'm so wonderful. I'm so and if there is only divine love without self-love, that's a partial understanding of God. Loving God implies loving everything else. I recently came up on a quote from Dorothy Day. She's a contemporary Christian mystic, I will say. And she has this wonderful quote, very powerful. So if you're sitting on a chair, fasten your seatbelt because you end up go to the floor. And she said, I only love God as much as I love the person I love the least. I'll repeat the second time for better impact. I'm seeing some of you passing out already. I only love God as much as I love the person I love the least. So my love for God has to go all the way up to down, left to right, in every direction. Because whatever exists in connection to the divine. I cannot say, Krishna, I love you so much, and then I don't know how to relate to any of you. Of course, to be honest, that's a high bar also, right? Let's be honest. Because we are starting to realize, wow, the goal of life was not only to love God, but to love everything. Right? And in our tradition, there is a compassionate description of how the journey gradually unfolds. And in the beginning, we will have a more beginner's understanding of what it means to love God. So, Srimad Bhagavatam, for example, will say, the Kanishta-bhakta, or the beginner's practitioner, will find God's presence in the altar. And will feel something for God in the altar. But then the altar closes, he doesn't know how to relate with anyone else. Something like that. The altar opens, Jai Krishna. The very neophyte may find God only in their altar, not even in other altars. Krishna is only in my altar at home. Your altar, I'm not so sure. We'll see. But surely he's in my altar. Now that's what we'll call Kanishta mentality. Hyper neophyte. It's okay, it's glorious in its own way. You have begun the path. We are not condemning that. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, you come to me whether you have desires, no desire, you want money, knowledge, come to me. We talk about the other details, we'll solve them later in conversations. So we can approach the divine from wherever we are. Let's have hope. But there's this depiction. In the beginning, God is on the altar. I don't see God in other people. I don't see God in nature, in this world. Just the altar. The intermediate practitioner sees God in his altar, their altar, others' altar, and in other people's heart. So they start to relate to other people. And the ultimate practitioner is having a difficult time not to find God everywhere. They're finding God everywhere. The famous story of Hiranyakashipu and Prahlad in our tradition. Hiranyakashipu is the prototype of not seeing God anywhere, and Prahlad, his son, is a prototype of seeing God everywhere. So Hiranyakashipu is asking Prahlad, where's your God? And Prahlad is everywhere, and he's like, where is he not? I cannot find one spot where he's absent. Like I was sharing yesterday with Gaurabani, Srila Prabhupada says, God is everywhere, and wherever God is his temple. So if God is everywhere, and whatever he is his temple, conclusion is? Here is the temple. If A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. So everywhere is his temple. So, I'm saying all this in the context of my main theme, which is self-love and divine love. In other words, remember Dorothy Day's quote? If I love God, I have to love everything, including the person I love the least. And many times the person I love the least is myself. Let's be honest. Sometimes we're Gorbanpo.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Why is it that often the person we love least is ourselves? Why is that?
Thank you for the question. You're inviting me, he's bringing the trailer of what I'm planning to say in a few minutes. And that's great. I love that because it's creating that. That's very important question, right? Because it sounds so paradoxical. No? Not even sometimes we do not like so much. Sometimes there is this idea called self-hatred. No? I don't know if there's one story, maybe you've heard that, from the Dalai Lama when he first came to the West. And it was basically his first visit to the West, like finding this new world, so to say, new psychology. He was speaking about compassion and kindness, that's his main message, and trying to introduce the teachings of Buddhism about the ahimsa and non-violence. And at one point someone asks him, so how to deal with self-hatred? And he heard the question and he didn't understand the question. So he had an assistant, a translator, and he was like 15 minutes talking to his assistant because he couldn't understand what was self-hatred. That was an unknown idea for him. So he thought he was understanding the English wrong. So what is the actual question? And 15 minutes like that. Till he had like an epiphany and realized, oh, there is such a thing as self-hatred here. So he'd say that from that moment he readjusted all his teaching in the presentation in the Western world to address something that for him was absolutely unknown before. Self-hatred. So, why? Of course, that's an important question we need to ask ourselves. And of course, there's no one single answer, I will say, because each of us come with our own background. But in many cases, at least from what I've observed and seen, I can tell you this is one of the main. I mean, I've been talking about different topics for the last 25 years and traveling around the world, but probably this is the theme that most people in the audience have felt like, yes, that's touching me deeply, very deeply. There's another author, Tara Brach, she's also Buddhist. She will talk about the trance of unworthiness. That's an interesting expression, no? Because we are all for samadhi and trance, but we are already in a trance sometimes. And the trance is, I am worthy, I am unworthy, I am not enough, I am never enough, I am not loved, I am unlovable. And if you feel yourself, if you don't feel that you are lovable, then you are, to make a play of words, you are not love-able. How will I dare to love someone if I feel that I am not lovable? You follow my point? So our philosophy is all about love, but if I don't feel myself loved, seen, accepted, I may not be able to dare to love. So many times this traces back to our childhood. In many cases, I'm not saying all. Again, I don't want here to give a one-size-fits-all answer because each case is unique. But from what I've seen many times, we have not been seen enough, heard enough, received enough, cared for enough by our primary caretakers. And that creates this false idea. You are not worthy of love. You do not deserve, or you have to earn it. No? And so then we enter then we enter the conditional contract, right? Okay, I will love you if, and then comes the endless list of, when you are perfect, then I love you. When you are impeccable, you belong. You are part. And many times we all need to belong. We already belong, but we don't feel we belong. So many times we compromise who we are just to belong, but we end up fitting in. Thus, belonging and fitting in is not the same. They are entire opposites. But it's funny, many times I found people using those two terms interchangeably. Belonging, fitting in. In order to belong, you have to be who you are. That's the only way you can belong. By showing who you are, how you are, no? As sincerely as possible, no? As transparently as possible. Like Krishna says in the Gita to Arjuna, you better do your dharma imperfectly than someone else's dharma perfectly. Right? Better you be a mess, but your own mess. No, than someone else's perfection. We can all bring perfect masks. No, but we don't want masks, we want mirrors. No, we want to see things for what they are. So, yeah, many times we inherit these false narratives. That you are not good enough, perfect enough, loving enough, lovable enough, and for that to happen, you need to earn, to deserve, to perform, to please everyone. I won't ask here people raise your hand who feels that, because I think it's useless exercise. We can all raise a hand. Like they do in the soccer stadiums, that everyone's like doing this, like wave, like So I think to begin with, it's important to normalize that, to normalize the conversations around the things. And then comes a very interesting layer that adds to this, or not adds, but it makes it worse, which is, how to say, religious trauma. Because I've seen many times people not coming with that background from their homes or their parents, but they enter a religious group or whatever, and they receive that narrative. Now, if you want to belong, you have to perform. No, you have to be perfect. You have to do this and this and in this way, this way, and this way, and if not, you are sin, you are frowned upon. So we start to perform the devotional superhero archetype. And many times we compromise our humanity in that. I can tell you from my own experience. Right? It's so delicate. It's constantly there's invitation to play the superhero. Me as a Swami, many times people, as we were talking yesterday, people over-idealize you. They think you're absolutely perfect and impeccable, and that's such an exhausting baggage to carry. And the more you over-idealize someone, you are dehumanizing that person. Because you are no longer human. Now you have to be superhuman. We are all human. We need to first be humans. Then we can speak about spirituality. But as the saying says, we are spiritual. We are not human beings trying to be spiritual. We are spiritual beings trying to be human. It's easier to be spiritual than to be human many times. Embracing our vulnerability, brokenness, woundedness, trauma and stuff. So yeah, many times we have inherited those narratives and we are ashamed of ourselves. We don't think I did something wrong, but we make them think I am wrong. I am something wrong, which is very different, very foundational. So yeah, those may be some of the reasons that why, again, I'm just speaking very generally, each case is unique, so I don't want to be impersonal in giving an abstract answer. I trust each of you apply that to your own case with sincerity, whatever applies to it. And a few of you were raising your hands a minute ago, so...
So that was about 5 minutes ago.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
So what touched me is that you said it's about the West, and I just want to contribute that in an ashram in India, in Prashanti Nilayam, there are different canteens like North and South and West and Eastern canteen, and he puts phrases everywhere like love all, serve all, etc. And in the Western canteen, he has put this, I am sorry, please forgive me, I love you. In no other place in the whole ashram this sentence.
Something like the Ho'oponopono series of affirmations, which already wants to mention. Yeah, we need to stay enough time with those ideas, right? Yes.
So my question is to stay in this picture of the strong magnet in the center and my magnet being a bit rusty. And when I feel this attraction so strongly, how do I love my rust? Because it's also part of the world.
Yeah. So then we go to the actual main theme of the presentation. We were just warming up till now, which is self-love and divine love. So how to love myself, not only in the context of loving God, but in the context of knowing that I'm loved by God to begin with. So, and He's loving me with all my rustiness and all my messiness. I remember once I entered a house and there was a kitchen, and the kitchen was a mess. But there was a sign in the kitchen which said, "God bless this mess." That's a good one. Not an excuse to keep your kitchen. I took it beyond the kitchen and applied it to my inner kitchen. God bless this. So I think it's very healing and very important for all of us. And to be honest, I found a lot of this emphasis way more in mystical Christianity than in my own tradition. And then that helped me to go back to my tradition and find that that's also there, but not emphasized enough. This idea that God already loves you. Many times in our tradition we may emphasize the goal of life is to love God, which is great. But if we don't have the foundation of you are already loved by God, maybe the motivation for me to love God may not be the most healthy one. Right? I will love Him so He loves me back. And when I say He, I could say she, I could say them. We have Goddess, God, Divine Couple, Divine Trinity. Just for the sake of practicality, I keep it He, but not limiting the infinite to gender. So again, it's so healing for me, and I've seen so many times the opposite of that. When we are not having a very healthy foundation of I'm already loved and accepted by the Divine, many times my main intention for practicing the spiritual life is trying to appease an angry God even many times. No? And many times that's a projection of unresolved stuff from childhood. No? My experience with my parents was not the best. They were my first gods, so to say. There was my first experience of an authority figure. And then God is the ultimate authority figure, so if something is not solved there, probably there will be projection. So that's why we need to heal all our relationships. That's sambandha. My relationship with the Divine, with myself, with others, because if I have a wrong idea of who the Divine is, who am I, it all affects the other relationships, because all are interconnected. You follow my point? If I give you an example. Okay, God is a very easily angry dictator above the clouds. He's not here, He's far away over there, indifferent to me. I may meet Him in a future time, He's not available here and now. And He gets angry very easily. He's not pleased with me, He's ashamed of me, and I have to perform perfectly to please Him. Oh my gosh. I'll be praying for you if you think like that. And by that misreading of the Divine, that's not God. That's my point. Many times I talk with atheist people and say, I don't believe in God. So I ask them, who is God for you? And they give me this definition. I say, I don't believe in that God either. We're on the same page. That's not a believable God. That's unbelievable for me. So we get that wrong idea of God, then we may think, okay, if God is that, then I get the wrong idea of me. I'm unlovable, I'm inherently bad, then I get the wrong idea of this world. This world is a punishing prison for people like me who are carrying an original sin, whatever. You follow my point? One distortion in one direction starts to distort all the other relationships. That's why Srila Prabhupada says if you're adding numbers, and you make the first addition wrong, no matter how correctly you do the other ones, end result, it's not working. So we need to get a proper idea, a coherent idea of who the divine is, and who we are, and what this world is. We may not have time these days to address each one of those. I tried to do that in my recent book. I have 4 chapters, one for love, one for God, one for the soul, and one for the material energy. I'm trying to explore how we get a realistic picture of each one of them, so they are coherent among one another. So our tradition will teach, like other traditions, God is love. Bible says that. We will say Raso Vaisaha, God is love. So if God is love, He cannot not love. Right? God is not loving, He's love. Love is not an optional feature in the divine. Sometimes I become loving, sometimes I cancel the quality and become the opposite. That's not possible. As I like to say, true love has no opposite. True love can only become more of what it already is. So we will say God is love. So if you are made of love, if that's your essence, your defining quality, you cannot go against that. If God will stop being love, God will stop being God. Thank God that doesn't happen. It's not that Krishna stopped being Krishna at some point. Krishna means the all-attractive, and Krishna is becoming more attractive at every moment. All-attractive doesn't mean he reached a limit of all attractiveness, but his attractiveness continues to expand. Because his love, his lovingness continues to expand. So that's the God we worship. Very loving God, very grateful God, like we were sharing a few words in the morning today. There's one beautiful commentary by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And he says, Krishna feels grateful for all the service that we have not yet offered to him, but in advance he feels grateful. When I read that line, I was like, this is too much. How can someone be grateful for all the things you haven't done yet, but in potential you could do? Right? Imagine such a generous person that meets you, Saraswati, what are you doing here? Anyhow, nice to see you. So, imagine that, meeting someone who, even if at present I don't have much to offer, but they know in potential you have so much to offer, and I'm seeing you by that. That's how Krishna, God, the divine, however you may like to call him, how we are being seen by this sweet absolute. Not for what we did in the past, which many times we do that. We judge each other by, oh, you did that 20 years ago. I know who you are. I put you in the box forever. No? That's not generous. No? So Krishna is not seeing us for our past, thank God. And Krishna is not even judging or seeing us for our present, thank God. Because it's still at present we may be a considerable mess. So he is seeing us for all that we can become in our brightest potential in the future. That's how both God and the enlightened beings contemplate us. They are not saying, you have done this, you are still doing that, but as Srila Siddhar Maharaj once said, your future is brilliant. And let's do whatever it requires to take you to that brilliant future. So that's how we are being seen by God, with the eyes of unconditional love. I like to call that irreversible grace. Probably that will be the topic of my next book. Irreversible grace. We generally speak about irreversible damage, right? But here we have irreversible grace. It's given, it's not taken back anymore. And I know this can sound a little bit naive for some to speak too much about God loves you infinitely and conditionally, especially, again, if we never had that experience. I remember once I was talking to a friend in Mayapur, and he told me, but Maharaj, what if someone never received unconditional love? I mean, they have no point of reference. They have no clue what it means to be accepted, with all faults included, with all scars, with all wounds. They have not that experience. They have the opposite experience. So how much can you tell them? No problem, Krishna loves you unconditionally. They don't even know what's unconditional love, right? So how to, not to convince them, but to hopefully allow them to have the experience of that. Because all this is not just words, we need the experiential part of it. So the natural conclusion is, well, if someone never received that experience from anyone, and you are talking to that person, then you are invited to give that person an experience of unconditional love. You have to embody for them the love that Krishna already has for them unconditional. They may not be able to grasp that, but if you incarnate that, embody that in 3D for them, that becomes an undeniable experience. Especially if you never had that, if you suddenly had a glimpse of that, that's such a contrast that you cannot but accept that. Of being received with unconditional regard, of being seen for who you are and loved for who you are. That gives this sense of belongingness. So, witnessing each other, right? In our ups and downs, being able to witness each other deeply. And I'd like to go there in a minute with the notion of darshan, right? Because darshan, generally we use the word darshan for seeing. No? We may even use the word darshan exclusively to I go to take darshan, right? Many times it's funny how we sometimes employ words, right? Because many times we use the word taking a little too much, in my opinion. I'm taking prasad, I'm taking darshan, I'm taking initiation. But actually we are all receiving all that. It's not so much like I'm a taker here. I'm a receiver of something that comes from above. But darshan, it can mean to see, but actually darshan means to be seen, most profoundly. To be seen in this case by a divine glance. The divine, how we are being seen in God's eyes. The Srimad say, try to see the world in the same way as Krishna sees this world. Not to imitate God, but just try to make an effort to empathize with his perspective. How is Krishna seeing everything? Try to go there and see what he's seeing everything with unconditional love and acceptance. Which again, this doesn't mean not to have criteria or boundaries, right? Someone comes and tries to attack someone. My unconditional love will be shown in jumping on that person and protecting everyone else. No, we have to be practical. But at the end of the day, even if there is people in our lives that we need to really take a distance from, it can happen. It happened to me. That shouldn't prevent us from somehow loving those people from the distance. Sometimes the distance is what I need to allow the unconditional love. If I'm too close, I'm not able to love that person that close. So I need to acknowledge my capacities, take a distance, and love you from a safe place. But the distance is for the sake of love. The distance is not for the sake of indifference, resentfulness, bitterness, cynicism. Because that can end up being escapism. So Krishna's loving us. This is darshan. Darshan is, if I'm going in front of the altar that we are all doing these days, it's not only I will see Krishna, how much I can see Krishna. So let's begin with I will be seen by the divine. I'll just present myself as naked as I can, internally, as vulnerably as I can. And stay in that place of being seen and knowing He's seeing me from tip to toe for who I actually are. I don't need to fake it. No? In English they have this saying, fake it till you make it. I like to adjust that saying, change one word and say naked till you make it. Naked in front of God, vulnerable, transparent. That's the famous Gopi Bastra Harana Lila in our tradition. That's one teaching from that. You know that this Lila where Krishna is stealing the clothes of the gopis. Long story short, gopis are bathing in the Jamuna river, their clothes are outside of the river, they are celebrating in 1 month yajna that they did, a vow to have Krishna, to marry God, basically. And their clothes are outside, and Krishna is outside of the river, on top of a tree. He caught all the clothes. So when the gopis are all celebrating, we finish our vow, we'll marry Krishna. And Krishna, he's up the tree and makes some noise like and so the gopis look back and Krishna with the clothes like casually like moving them and like, okay. So the gopis are immediately going down the river and that was winter in Vrindavan, gets pretty cold there. And there Krishna, please give us back our clothes. Yeah, of course. Come. I mean, I'm here with your clothes, you are there, you just come and I give your clothes. I have nothing against that. And the gopis are like, but we are naked. Come. Again, Krishna wants to see the nakedness of the gopis. But again, there is no, degraded issue here. We can take the lesson. He wants to see the gopis in their full transparency and honesty. And the gopis leave the Jamuna river and go to Krishna, but they are covering their intimate parts. So still there is no full nakedness there. So Krishna he wants to see us, and he already sees us for who we are. But we are so good at putting masks, right, and hiding. So he wants that we voluntarily choose to surrender. Like when Draupadi was being disrobed, with one hand she was calling Govinda first, but with the second hand she was still holding onto the sari. And unlimited sari didn't come yet, at that point yet. When she let that go, that's when Krishna manifested. So anyhow, the gopis are going to Krishna, all covered, trying to hide. This is very interesting parallel to the Genesis story of the Bible, right? Adam and Eve are naked. They become aware of that nakedness and they hide immediately. Shame. Now they become aware, I'm naked, I'm fragile, I'm vulnerable. I'm ashamed of myself, I'm hiding. And God has depicted them as sewing clothes for them to cover, not to feel so bad about themselves. Interesting. So anyhow, the gopis are approaching Krishna, covering their intimate parts, and Krishna says, you have made a grave offense by bathing naked in the Jamuna. So now you need to beg forgiveness to the Jamuna. So the two hands with which you are hiding, basically, you need to put both on top of your head and offer him pranam. So that was his way of saying, I want to see you fully as you are. No hiding, no masks, no walls. I love you as you are, basically. You don't need to pretend in front of me. You don't need to impress me, Krishna said. I don't need to be impressed. I will be impressed if you just show up for who you are. This beautiful definition of, and I not forget you, Madhava, give me 1 second. Brené Brown, maybe you've heard of Brené Brown? Yes. Very interesting speaker and author on the topic of vulnerability and shame specialist, as she will say many times. When someone asks her, so what do you work on? I'm a shame specialist. And people say, okay. And they just run away from the room. Who wants to go there? But she will speak a lot about vulnerability and make a connection between vulnerability and courage. Many times we don't relate the two. We think vulnerability is weakness. But to be vulnerable means, and she will say, vulnerability means to have the courage to show up when you don't have a control over the outcome. Stay with that one for a moment. Right? To have the courage to show up in any relationship, life situation, when you don't have a control over the outcome. Because many times we show up when we have all predetermined, prescripted, all the masks in place. Okay, here I am. No, you're not showing up. So that's a form of hiding. So real vulnerability is here and trusting the process. So anyhow, that's how we are invited to present ourselves to someone who loves us unconditionally. I'm going to Mali now. Sorry for it.
No, that's fine. Thank you for keeping in mind. You just said earlier, sometimes I need to have distance and feel safe in order to love someone. I need a certain distance. So I wonder how your experience and your marks are of that you know by yourself that you feel safe. What is the experience of feeling safe for you?
Okay. You have 3 more hours to hear. I don't want to get in the way of the rest of their schedule here, because there's a lot to say. Thank you for the question. And I appreciate the point, because we all need to feel safe in order to be vulnerable. Right? You cannot just be vulnerable with anyone, because not everyone knows what to do with your vulnerability. People need to know how to honor someone else's vulnerability. And it can be unsettling for some people. I mean, if I go in the street and stop someone and say, I'd like to fully disclose your heart right now, most people will call an Uber and leave as soon as possible, because it's big responsibility, big serious stuff. So how to feel safe? Well, first of all, I will say one way to feel safe is that nobody can tell you that you are in a safe space. You have to feel that yourself. Right? If I start this meeting telling of you, you are in a safe space now, I won't feel safe if someone tells me. Like, I don't know if I'm safe. I need to feel that to prove to have my experience of that. You cannot tell me if I'm safe or not. That's my own decision, right? So that's something to begin with, and that's a process. No? I mean, you may be in front of a very trustworthy person, but for you to feel safe, and there are degrees of safety. It's not a black and white issue. I'm safe. I'm not. I'm safe. Because again, many of us have been traumatized, abused, and so many things that opening ourselves to trust, it's birth, how to say, labor work, how to say, like giving birth to a child. It's lots of work, like opening. And we may open 1% and see how it works, and then close and go back to my safe space, and then go back open 2%. And for some people, it's a gradual. For all of us, it's a gradual process. So. But I will say that the symptom of feeling safe is basically that I feel that the other person is interested in who I am, interested in knowing who I am. That the person is not being judgmental and coming to my meeting, so to say, with a long list of assumptions about who I am. Because we are so expert at doing that, let's be honest. There is even in the research that people tend to judge each other after 3 seconds of seeing each other at the distance. Just by how they look. Already there are some assumptions going on. You are this, you are that, you belong to this category, I put you in this box. Hopefully then you meet the person and you can deconstruct all that stuff and really meet the person. So yeah, at least for me that's the safety thing. The person is really trying to relate to who I am, not to my credentials, not to my orange robes, not to my role as a Swami. For me, all that are like secondary designations. They're somewhere, but they do not define me to my core. And of course, if someone wants to know me, that takes time. If I want to know you, that takes time. I cannot just, in 5 minutes, let's know each other. Though at the same time, and there comes a practical invitation that I want to extend to all of you, paradoxically at the same time, we can get to know each other pretty quickly if we are in a safe space. If we are able to craft safe space where there is a very natural energy of trust and openness, so quickly that can create a connection between ourselves. A few days ago I was in in Austria. We had a retreat there, and every 2 days we will do in the evening circle sharing. So we basically sat in a circle, had our talking stick. It was a big one, like from here to there, almost like a danda. I have my and it's just about like share whatever if you want to share, again, because it's not like share something, but if you feel inspired to share whatever you feel like share. Nothing, no attached rules to it. And everyone else has to listen. That's not easy to listen, just in case. Listen without judging. Listen without labeling. Listen without the temptation of giving advice to the other person. It's not about, it's just listening. No, but I have all the solutions to your problem. Listen. Right? I have so many things to preach to you this moment. Listen. Listen, and also listen how the things that the other person says reflect back to your own journey. How many times that the person is saying the things you do not dare to say yourself. We have learning to listen and be present to that. That's powerful. So my point with all that is that many of the people in the circle knew each other for 10, 20 years, but in more what I will call socio-religious dynamics. Like they will meet once in a week for the Sunday Mass or Sunday Feast, whatever the designation. And it will be like, and I'm not condemning that, but it was just like, good morning, how are you, good evening, goodbyes, see you next weekend, Haribol, everything nectar. Yeah, because sometimes we can show up for a religious circle in a performative way. Let's be honest. And religious masks are the most tricky ones, and they are the most effective ones for hiding. Because they're religious. They look nice, they feel holy, but they're still a mask. So many of these people knew each other in that dynamic, but they actually didn't know each other. So then we did this circle, and after 5-10 minutes, some of them were opening their hearts, some of them were crying, and some of them were like, oh, is that you? Right? I saw you for the last 15 years every weekend, but now, I thought I knew you, but now I'm really getting to know you. And it was just after 5-10 minutes. But there was some intentional crafting of space in order to share. So sometimes we need that. So in that context, I'd like to invite you to a practical exercise, if you allow me. I don't want to force that, again, as I cannot tell you you're in a safe space. But I think it may be healing and beautiful to give us a glimpse of how, if we open ourselves sincerely and dare to trust for a few minutes the other person and be received and receive the other person, have a glimpse of how we're being loved and accepted by the divine. How we can give each other a short experience of unconditional love that represents the unconditional love of Krishna-bhakti. And this is a simple exercise. You may have done it or know about it, which is gazing. And it's just basically sitting, we will sit one person in front of, just in pairs, and just looking at each other's in the eyes. With compassion, with openness, without judging. It can feel terrifying the first few seconds, as I can see in some of the faces. But it's important to go through that as well, and to go beyond that and find that beyond that there is acceptance and love. Oh, the other person is seeing me fully. I'm seeing the person fully, like I'm doing now with Nico, and I belong. We are so connected, but we just need to go a little bit like beyond the surface, right? So if you allow me to do this social experiment with all of you, which is very beautiful. It's a way of witnessing each other. A friend of mine told me the other day, she did something like that recently, say, it was beautiful how she said, witnessing each other is a form of social justice. No, I really like the way I put it. No. So you can sit in pairs, ideally, if possible, between pairs that do not know each other. I mean, as much as it's possible. I don't want to create a whole mess. If not, the one for next to you, that's fine. We still do not know each other. We can always continue to know each other. And just for a few minutes, just glance at each other with compassion and acceptance and welcoming. How did it go? Probably was just 2 minutes. So yeah, I hope you were able to have an experiential glimpse of what it means to relate to one another unconditionally, as much as we can, free from certain labels, and to have a glimpse of how amazing the soul is, each of you are. And that's so important in our description of self-love. How can we love, why we should love ourselves, even if someone would like to ask that question. Well, Krishna loves you, and Krishna considers you amazing. That's what he says in the Bhagavad Gita. 2nd chapter, verse 29, if you don't believe me. First, he describes the soul indirectly, what the soul is not. Soul cannot be killed, does not die, cannot be burned, and so on and so on. And when it comes for him the time to say something positive about who we are, he only has one word, and he repeats that word 3 times in that verse. Ascharyavat, Ascharya, Ascharyavat, which means amazing. So Krishna says, who you are amazing, amazing, amazing. Wow. We will be walking this street and someone tells us, even one, you are amazing, most of us is marrying that person. Well, no, it's only that everything. Krishna tells you 3 times. He could be saying that so many more times, but some other things need to be said in the Bhagavad Gita. But he wants to make the point. Now, in Sanskrit, sometimes when you repeat something 3 times, it means, please have this clear. Like Haranam, Haranam, Haranamaiva, Kivalkalam, Nashtiyam, Nashtiyam, Nashtiyam. It's not that the author is stuttering or something, but it's Stuna Nikanana Nyaya is called. It's the logic of pounding the post. You want the post to be fixed and clear, not only once, 2, 3 times. So here Krishna is saying, the soul is amazing, amazing, amazing. So we cannot argue against that. Right? You cannot tell Krishna, well, that applies to everyone else except for me. No? We should edit the Bhagavad Gita, you should change that verse, put a footnote saying, I am an exception. No. So we have to accept, I am amazing. You have to be able to look at the mirror and say, I am amazing. But not in any proud way, because I am not my own creation. So as I like to say, I happen to be amazing. We are units of amazingness. That's a good way of describing yourself. Who are you? I'm a unit of amazingness. And I'm not my own creation, just to keep ourselves humble. But that's who I am, so I have to honor that. So that's very important. Who we are. Let's conclude with this. I don't want to take very much of your time, and I'll leave a few minutes if there are any questions or something more. But this is a very usual question, who are you? That's a perennial question, who am I? We are basically all day trying to solve that question, consciously or unconsciously. And we can reply to that question in so many wrong ways that they end up defining who we are, who we think we are. So many times, if someone asks you who you are, we will think, what do I possess? For some people, who I am means possessions. The more I have, the more I am. It's like, the more possessions I own, the more my sense of self feels extended. Of course, that's not true, but that gives that sense. I am what I have. I'm not a human being, I'm a human having. Right? And of course, that's problematic, because if I think I am what I have, at the end of the day, when you receive the news that you don't own anything, that's who I am there. No? That's existential crisis again. So I like to say, you don't owe anything, but you own. I put it this way: you own nothing. You belong to everything. No? You don't need things to belong to you. You need to belong. And not only you need to belong, you need to become aware that you already belong. So it's not that we do not belong and I have to belong. You already belong. You just need to gain awareness of that. So that's the first wrong answer. I am, who are you? I am what I have. Please no, because you don't have anything. we can't own any. We are to belong. Other answer will be, what could be? I am what I do. No? Human doings, not human beings. And sometimes we can become quite a workaholic case. No? Because if I stop doing, I'm being productive, I feel useless. Right? If I stay 5 minutes with myself, the festival of misery starts to appear. Right? And we laugh not to cry. Yeah. If you felt sick for a week and you're gonna do all the things you do, then maybe you will see how you feel about yourself. Because you are not producing anything, but you still are who you are. In Krishna's eyes, an amazing person. But do I feel amazing? Or do I need to produce stuff? Hopefully not. Hopefully my doing is a result of my being. Right? I feel I am so much in connection to who I am that what I do is like a celebration of that. I try to do stuff so I derive my identity from my doing. You follow the difference? So again, please do not reply. I'm sure you will introduce yourself many times these days to people. Who are you? So do not go to the human having side, do not go to the human doing side. And sometimes there is another idea, a few other ideas we need to dismantle, which is how other people think of me. No? I am public opinion. What the masses think of me, that's who I am. Please do not go there. Especially in today's age, social media, likes, comments. If I don't have my daily dose of likes, I feel terrible about myself. We can become so dependent on that. My sense of self is depending on how many likes I receive per day. I mean, we are laughing, but sometimes that's the actual truth. If I make a post, usually I have 2,000 likes and I have 0. The whole world is like, what's going on? Who am I? Did I kill someone without knowing? Nobody likes me? So we are not what other people, not necessarily what other people think of us. Of course, some people may think of us things that are accurate, but do not become dependent on public opinion. And then comes the most delicate one. We are not what we have, we are not what we do, we are not what other thinks of us. And this is maybe the most dangerous one. We are not what we think of us. Because sometimes we tell to ourselves those things that we will never dare to tell anyone else. But to us, in the privacy of our own minds, oh my gosh, there is like endless narrative of, sometimes, hopefully I'm wrong in all of you, but sometimes, again, you are worthless, you are unlovable, you are not enough, over and over, repetitive, catatonic repetition. That's how the mind becomes your worst enemy, as Krishna was saying. You have to befriend that enemy. You don't have to kill the mind, you have to make your worst enemy your best friend. In one sense, it's a bigger challenge. and let your mind remind you, you are loved already. That means you are lovable. Love what God sees in you. So Saint John of the Cross will say, I heard that and I felt that. Love what God sees in you. What is Krishna seeing in you that he finds amazing? Learn to love that. Because loving God means loving the things that God loves. Prabhupada say, you love me, you love my dog. So you love Krishna, love the things he loves, which includes you. And includes everyone else. Because this is not only a feel-good thing, oh I love myself and I love myself. Yes, but Krishna loves everyone else. So those are not the ways to answer who we are. Human having, human doing, what other thinks of me, what I think of me at times. So how to reply to the question, who am I? Of course we can reply in many ways, but in the context of today's discussion, maybe we can reply, I am a beloved of the divine. Again, why not to start on that positive note? I'm loved, as the song was singing yesterday, no? Kalki was saying that, no? I am loved, right? By you? Thank you. So when he told me before singing the song, I'm singing this song, it's like, oh, that's a perfect soundtrack trailer to my lecture today. But we need to, not only to say it, I mean, we may need to begin saying that, okay, we are loved, but then living as the beloved, living a life of the beloved, staying in that place enough time. We may all need some few minutes at the beginning of our day, reminding ourselves, I'm loved, I already belong, I'm already accepted, as I am. I don't need to fake, I need to be who I am. And if someone doesn't like that, it's not my problem. And I will see that also with compassion for the others, not with rejection. So anyhow, some thoughts, nothing systematic, but I want to share some thoughts in connection to the idea of self-love in divine love. How we can love God, and our love of God should include love for everything else, including ourselves.
How do you decide in any given moment whom or what to love when?
In principle, everything is to be loved. In principle. In practice, we may be far away from that principle. So then comes the honest acknowledgement that where I am now. Because how according to my capacity, how can I love you in a way that I'm loving myself as well? Right? Because sometimes in loving someone else, we end up hurting ourselves. So in that case, you are not loving yourself, and you are not actually loving the other person. Because true love has to be loving in every direction. Right? So there's no one final answer. I will say at any given moment, any given situation, I have to pay attention. Okay, how can I love in this case in the best possible way, in a way that remains loving to me, loving to the other, loving to everyone involved in this situation. And for that you have to be very honest like inventory where I am today, which is my capacity. Because I cannot imitate great lovers. Right? Jesus was on the cross and he said, Father, forgive them, they do not know what they are doing. But maybe someone is putting a nail on your hand, you may not be able to pronounce that word. And it's okay, you cannot imitate. You have to act according to your adhikar, we will say in our tradition. Bhagavatam says, Swe Swe adhikari janishta saguna parikirtita. To acknowledge your current capacities is real virtue. Real virtue doesn't mean to be perfect, but to be honest about where you are. No, Krishna's never saying be perfect, he's just asking be honest. That's way more difficult. And sincerity is invincible, Srila Siddha Maharaj will say. We have to be sincere where I am and how in this particular day and moment I can offer myself in love in a way that is not codependent, harming to myself, another mask in the name of love. It requires introspection. We cannot escape from that. If we want to love wisely, we need to accompany love with introspection, because love is not just a mere sentiment. It has to be coupled by contemplation, introspection, and sometimes in our attempts to love, we may have done it not in the most functional ways. Okay, you missed the mark, shoot again the next time with more accuracy. But hopefully in our quote-unquote failed attempts to love, we do not become cynical enough to the point of concluding, oh, this love project is not working. No? Cancel for this lifetime. I close my bubble, nobody can access here. It doesn't work like that. But it also doesn't work just to be naive and have no criteria. So, some situations, I don't know, we need to put boundaries. of course. Again, I'm talking about unconditional love, but inside unconditional love, there are conditions also sometimes. Right? Like a father loves his child unconditionally, but there will, if the child is becoming a serial killer or something, the father will put some conditions to how the child is behaving. But that doesn't mean that the father stopped loving his child unconditionally. Follow my point? So, again, all this needs that we apply some discernment at any given moment, because any given moment situation is not the same as the other one, so there is no final answer. You do like this and it will work always. No. It's constant. The Bhagavatam uses this term, Desha Kala Vibhagavit. We have to become experts at knowing time, place and circumstance. Desha Kala Vibhagavit. At discerning time, place and circumstance. What to do, how to do, at any time, place and circumstance. That may take a different shape. Okay. We have a few more minutes before putting our discussion to rest. I don't know, someone else was raising, you were raising.
Yeah.
Your name, sorry?
Seema.
Seema.
I was listening to this unconditional love and then distancing yourself, and so sometimes in some situation you have no choice. Like sometimes I've seen mothers after the birth of the children, they are not able to accept, or you have an ailing partner or a parent. So I was just trying to figure out where is the source of that unconditional love, or where is that potential of distancing yourself in that situation, because I don't think so that it's doable in some situations. So you are forced to, hang out there and try to love unconditionally. Otherwise, how that goes?
Of course, we are talking in very general terms. We are not addressing any given situations, and so I cannot be too specific. So, because also that happens in some situations, we may feel I don't have a choice in this relationship, when we actually have a choice. In some cases, but we are not willing to contemplate that choice. And we end up just becoming trapped in a relationship which is toxic and abusive, and we may need to get out of that. Again, I'm talking in general. I'm not telling anyone. I'm talking about your relationship with your... you have to figure that out yourself. We can talk personally later, but in some cases, my point is, some cases we may feel we don't have a choice, where we actually do have a choice. And that may be, in some cases, when we have that choice, it's empowering to step into the possibility of, I do actually have a choice here. And in the cases where we do not have a choice, whatever that may be the scenario, again, I'm talking very abstractly. I'm not saying it's not challenging to show unconditional love. If you pay attention, I never used the word easy once in the whole lecture. And I will not be using it. Sorry. Things are not easy. But as I like to say, the opposite of easy, if I ask what's the opposite of easy, what will you say quickly, without thinking? Difficult. I will say no, the opposite of easy is impossible. And easy and difficult is the middle path. Just to change a little bit the paradigm, right? In the sense that sometimes we make difficult equal to impossible. And when something is difficult, we give up, because we equate that with impossible. Well, actually, difficult is just the exact sweet spot, the middle point. Yeah, because if things are impossible, of course that's impossible, it's discouraging. But if things are easy, that's so boring. Right? I don't know, you come to a lesson of harmonium and I teach you a melody and you already know the melody, so what comes next? And I teach you the same melody, I know that melody, Maharaj. But it's easy. Yeah, but I want something more challenging. So that's what we call difficult, challenging. Not difficult like bad intended, but an invitation to grow. So sometimes it's difficult to find a way to express unconditional love to someone. Sometimes, we may need just to say, okay, I know that behind all this, and many people make it really hard for us to love them unconditionally. As we may make them hard to love ourselves unconditionally sometimes. Let's be honest, sometimes we behave in ways that seem that we do not want to be loved unconditionally. unconditional because we are making it so hard. But we may again sometimes need to take the distance so I can see from a broader perspective. There's a lovable soul there. Behind all that, those covering, all that rust, all that stuff, there is a brilliant Atma soul, which is so covered. And again, if someone is doing bad things, doesn't mean that I will condone that in the name of unconditional love. But I can, while doing what needs to be done to protect people from abuse or whatever, I still can hold that view, bigger view of behind all that, behind that monster, there's a beautiful soul, which is so covered. So avidya, we will say. As I quoted Jesus a minute ago, forgive them, they do not know what they are doing. They do not know means there is ignorance. We call that avidya. So out of ignorance, you end up doing the worst of the worst. But in potential, you could do the best of the best. So, yeah. When we study human history, and especially those cases which are the worst of the worst, indirectly they are showing how of a bright potential we have. Because if you can go down to that point, if you will redirect your potential in the proper direction, you could go in such a brilliant direction. So, and we should know we all have that dark potential also, right? Even if I'm not a whatever serial killer, I could go in that direction if I just allow myself to go there more and more, and there's no bottom line. So we should humble ourselves in that connection. But yeah, my personal journey, what has helped me more is sometimes when you're in connection with people who maybe have hurt you the most, or you feel betrayed by them. And of course you need to go through all these periods, feeling confused, allowing yourself to be angry. You need to contact all those emotions, right? So many other things. Before you reach a place probably of forgiveness or reconciliation and unconditional love, first you may need to be bewildered, confused, anger, etc. So it's a process. And sometimes, again, you can appreciate someone from a healthy distance. If we are too close, we actually lose sight of who we are. It's like if I put my hand here, it's so close, I lost sight of my hand. I no longer see the hand for what it is. I need some distance, some detachment. Detachment means that. It's not indifference, not escapism, but enough distance so I can see things for what they are and relate to them for what they are. So, again, it's a general answer. Each case and situation are unique, and I trust your discernment in how to apply this in practice. So, we are on time now. I'm sure there's so much to share, and feel free to, if you want, we can continue talking more informally, but I don't want to take more of the time because there are other activities. Still tomorrow in the morning we have a morning ritual. I'm planning to share as an extended experience of that, a morning ritual tomorrow with some meditations in connection to unconditional love, being loved by the divine. So you're invited there tomorrow.
What time?
10.
Tomorrow morning, Padmanabha will guide the morning ritual.
It will be in the tent.
In the May tent, exactly. And then we have a symposium where Swami Padmanabha will also be a part and elaborate further.
Yeah.
And then, we want to hear more. We have a small so-called retreat from Monday to Wednesday, Monday evening to Wednesday morning, here at the lake. So you can see also on the website we will announce it sometimes. So if you're interested to join,
And Mary also approached us.
Yes, yeah, of course, yeah. And we also brought some books, your books. Only 5 exemplars of Radical Personalism, but many of the new ones. And we will offer you a special prize during the festival, so if you would like to hear and read more about divine love, self-love and divine love, just go to now there is a book stall, and we will offer this to you.
Where?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to all of you for your time, for your attention, for your presence, your openness, your reciprocation. I'm the guy sitting in this fancy seat opening my mouth, but it's 50% and 50% it's back and forth. So you did your part, so thanks so much for that.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Thank you.